USA Emergency Broadcast Network, your source for reliable disaster preparedness information.
The views and opinions expressed on this program are not necessarily the views of this station, its management, sponsors, or other hosts. If you have any comments or suggestions about this program, please contact us at radio@usaebn.org. That's radio@usaebn.org.
Welcome to the Zeta Report here on USA Emergency Broadcasting Network. We are live first Mondays of every month. My name is Andre. I'm with USAEBN and the co-host of this show, Nancy Leader from ZetaTalk.com. Nancy, how are you?
I'm here again to say it's getting more and more exciting. Last month we talked about petrol in the skies, fire in the skies, and that has only gotten so much worse. You know, where people see it above the clouds, below the clouds, fireballs dropping, twisting slowly, smoking, and setting fires when it lands on occasion. And this is going to just keep going. So in the meantime, we also have better Nibiru visibility. It came closer. You know, the petrol, according to the Zeta, sopped up a lot of this red dust that was fuzzing the view. So we have a clearer view of Nibiru and its moons, independent moons, moon swirls, blah, 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 blah. And it's just remarkable. So people are seeing bright lights in the sky and sending me videos saying, is this what I think it is? That kind of thing. So Nibiru visibility has solidly arrived. It's not in the media. You won't hear that. You won't hear admissions. What you hear is stupid excuses, you know, for anything that is up in the skies. But I want to talk about the petrols and the Nibiru visibility. But before we get going, let me read our standard disclaimer. In partnership with USAEBN, Zeta Talk and the Zeta Report will be discussing the challenges of living on a planet beset with change, rising seas, increasing earthquakes, and volcanic activity, weather gone wild, and the worry of what to do in a worst-case scenario. We will also inject Zeta Talk prophecy on what is coming next and advice on readiness plans and safe locations. Whenever Zeta Talk is quoted, please remember that prophecy is not fact. It is opinion. It only becomes fact when it happens. The Zetas are remarkably accurate but have been wrong on occasion. Bear that in mind. For more information on this subject, please visit ZetaTalk.com or the Zeta Report on YouTube. The red dust in the tail of Nibiru trailed behind Nibiru in 2003 when Nibiru entered the inner solar system. This was because Nibiru was traveling rapidly and it was on the move. So, you know, the dust was behind it. But when Nibiru slowed for a passage past the sun, the tail blew past Nibiru. Nibiru slowed, the tail did not. So, whoop, the dust came in front of Nibiru, which was poking along. When the petrol bubbles also blew past Nibiru and now are absorbing the red dust, we have clarity. We have returned to the clarity we had in 2003 when Nibiru passed over Earth's orbit on the way to the sun. We have this clarity in 2021 when Nibiru is approaching Earth for a passage. You have to see this diagram on my YouTube vid where it shows Nibiru crossing Earth's orbit in 2003 in front of Earth. And that's when people got dramatic photos with their cameras of this red ball with red dust trailing behind it. That's what it looks like now, because it went past the sun, even inside of the Venus orbit, and pushed the Earth back in her orbit. So now we have Nibiru coming outside of Venus orbit toward the Earth and coming closer and closer, and it's back where we were in 2003 when there was a closeness between Nibiru and Earth, and we could see Nibiru. Water or oil will merge to form a water bubble or oil spill, held together by surface tension. Petrol bubbles have surface tension, but they also merge into petrol monsters. The Zetas explain this process often starts with a speck of red dust, which is magnetically charged. They are magnetically attracted to other pieces of red dust, and therefore they pull the petrol bubbles together. Thus we have petrol bubbles merging into a petrol bubble and eventually those tiny particles merging into a bubble and eventually into a petrol mass or petrol monster, all wafting earthward. In other words, if you have two drops of water on the tabletop and one of them touches the other, it's like bloop, and we have a large drop. And then there's another drop that comes close, and then bloop, we have an even larger drop. That's what's happening with the petrol. Alberto shows us in a snap from Italy that light captured by a petrol monster will go in circles, unable to completely escape. The entire petrol monster lights up like a lamp from the center to the periphery. The light rays so captured by the petrol monsters turn in circles around and around, bent at the periphery. You know, they light up, and you can see this in his videos, but it gets a lot more interesting. Here we go. Nibiru is normally shrouded by so much iron oxide red dust attracted to Nibiru's magnetic field that it looks like a dark, fuzzy object, as it has since 2003. But now the petrol masses are sweeping up and holding the red dust, clearing the view, and you can actually see this. You can see this in one of the, the photos. We have some excellent photographers, amateurs, in addition to Alberto, and one of them showed all the red dust inside of a petrol dust, and you could see that it had accumulated. Another one showed what is like the monster from space. A petrol bubble encountered red dust, and as the red dust sucks together what's inside and what's outside, it looks like it's eating it. It looks like a giant blob that opens up on one side and it's sucking in red dust. And that's the only way I can describe it. It looks like it's eating a vacuum cleaner. When the petrol encounters red dust and absorbs it, the red dust pulls the petrol toward it. The petrol appears to be eating the red dust. Being magnetically charged, the red dust tends to cling together. Thus, when the petrol mass starts to incorporate the red dust, it is the petrol that is pulled along. In other words, the petrol does not rule, the red dust rules, because it's got magnetic attraction and it wants to clink together like magnets want to do, and it's up there, wielding its fist. Quoting Zeta Talk, the past couple months have been a phase shift toward clarity for those scanning the skies for evidence of the Nibiru complex. The red dust is charged and thus seeks to cling to Nibiru or its moon swirls, even creating magnetic fields around these elements. Having the complex clouded by this red dust was considered inevitable. When out in space, this red dust would drag behind Nibiru, but when Nibiru slowed for his passage past the sun, it caught up to Nibiru and enveloped Nibiru and its moons in this fog. Then in early 2019, the petrol bubbles arrived. The red dust was absorbed into the petrol masses, trapped there by the oil in this new environment. A new view of Nibiru and its moon swirls and individual moons in a string of pearls has emerged. Great clarity will be provided, especially as Nibiru continues to approach the Earth. And boy, the great clarity, those photographers just went nuts with the red dust swept out of the way like this. All kinds of things became. Nibiru has an atmosphere where we get petrol pounding down on us, right? And it was seen by the Lamanovsk satellite from above. What was his explosions on the outer edge of the atmosphere? And then we have fireballs drifting down, trailing smoke all over the world. People are recording this saying, what the heck? Nobody knows what it is, but they don't go to read Zeta Talk, which they should do. In any case, Nibiru has an atmosphere too. It's more of a water planet than we are, and so therefore it has a lot of oxygen, and they get pummeled, and as long as there's oxygen to burn up those petrols, you have a little fire. And these guys are catching fire, on Nibiru. Anyway, it's remarkable. And I have the photos. Just go see the YouTube video. What happens when two giant petrol masses collide? There is a lot of room in space, but the wafting tail of Nibiru creates scenarios where there is pressure to either merge or move to distance from one another. When two giants merge, the larger will first break through the surface wall of the smaller mass, distorting it in the process. So how big is big? How big do these petrol masses get? The surface tension holding the Petrol Monster into a cohesive mass weakens as it grows larger. During turmoil, such as will occur during the passage by Earth, a Petrol Monster will be broken up and disperse into smaller masses. First cohesive petrol masses, then consumption of the smaller mass, then dispersing of the consumed mass remnants. In other words, it goes in two ways. It can break up and get smaller, or it can get, suck together and, and get larger. So this is going on all the time. What does it mean when the petrol mass appears in a geometric shape? Does the petrol mass itself assume this shape, or is this an illusion? Where light escapes from one weak point on the petrol mass surface, this results in pressure on the opposite side of the petrol mass, such that there is less light to escape at that point. In mathematical precision, don't ask me to give it to you, the formula, similar light ray reduction occurs around the surface of the petrol mass, resulting in the appearance of an altered surface for the petrol mass. Now, Alberto sometimes gets them where they appear as cubes or rectangles, but mostly they appear as hexagons. I don't know, but anyway, it has something to do with light escaping, and then the photons are not in balance and do something else, and so there's probably a formula to be, but I'm not that good with math. Okay. That said, what is to be made of the photo capture on March 26th by Manuel, since Nibiru is at the orbit of Venus and the size of Venus is seen from Earth? It's known because of the transit of the sun. You can see how big it is against the sun. Is this object in Manuel's photo 5 times the transit size? Now we're getting down to seeing the moons of Nibiru. Yeah, and that Nibiru is supposed to be 4 times or maybe even 5 times the diameter of Earth, with moons that are equivalent to our moon. What are we seeing in these photos? And by jum, it's logical and it fits. The Nibiru that shows up in this photo appears to be 4 times the size, the correct diameter for Nibiru. Alberto captured a close-up of Nibiru using his telescopic lens at 8x zoom. By shrinking his photo of Nibiru to 1/8 its size, does this equate to Manuel's capture? Yes. In other words, I love it when these guys confirm each other, and they do. So what we have is the size of Nibiru confirmed, the size of the moons confirmed, the ratio difference confirmed, Earth to our moon and Nibiru to its, moons that are up there next to it. And there it is, Zeta talk right again, which I love to say. In the opinion of the Zetas, Nibiru is 4 times the diameter of Earth, and the moons of Nibiru equate in size to the Earth's moon. The petrol and red dust clusters closely around Nibiru because it is the bully magnet and the red dust is charged. The two dominant moons that form the double helix on either side of Nibiru are buried in the petrol and red dust, so their true size is difficult to determine. But as Nibiru draws closer, this and other mysteries will be revealed. If the moons of Nibiru equate to the Earth's moon in size, and Nibiru is 4x the diameter of Earth, does this latest photo from Florida, that's another photographer, not Manuel, but Mario, on April 17th show this ratio? the petrol burning in the atmosphere of Nibiru and the one dominant moon in the double helix. So the petrol is set afire because of the oxygen that surrounds Nibiru, and it's got plenty because it's a water planet and it keeps breaking down its water, right? So all of this oxygen, is dragged around to the two moons that are close by in the double helix. And sometimes you've got fire there, too. Not all the time, comes and goes. It has an atmosphere along the outline or the horizon. This is the burn mark, where the burning petrol is seen both before the horizon, at the horizon, and just after the horizon. And there's so many, you have to go into the Ning and look at the pinned blog called Nibiru Visibility and just page through. I don't know how many pages. We have a ton of stuff, and it keeps growing, right? Do the petrol bubbles burn on the upper atmosphere of Nibiru? Why would they not? This is not a continuous process, as can be seen in these two photos taken hours apart on the same day. In one, explosions on the upper atmosphere of Nibiru. In the other, no explosions detected. In other words, it's not a continuous process, which you would expect from a fire. Just as the petrol masses burn when they reach the Earth's outer atmosphere, where there is oxygen, this process also occurs for Nibiru, which has water and an atmosphere. The Anunnaki live there. One of Nibiru's two dominant moons also has an atmosphere. Oh, that's why I thought it was spread over, but I forgot about this, as the Zeta said. One of the moons, son of a gun. So they can live on their moon, but we can't live on ours. This close-up shot of Nibiru and its two dominant moons on either side shows that one of the moons has an atmosphere. Petrol is burning over that moon, and for this to occur, oxygen must be present. To have an atmosphere, the moon must also have water, as this is how an atmosphere is developed. Primitive life has evolved on that moon, but no intelligent life. Well, we don't have intelligent life on our moon. Moon swirl tubes are most often visible when sunlight funnels down through them to emerge at the end like a flashlight. This is a brilliant light. A moon swirl seen from the side, pointing one end toward the sun, is normally not as brilliant as the light coming out the end of a moon swirl like a flashlight. Normally, light will bounce down along the interior of the moon swirl, not escaping until the end, ricocheting off the sides during this process. When the tube turns to directly face the sun, this sunlight exits to the left of the tube, off into space. Thus, the tube seems to disappear. Now, this is, when you watch the video, you will see that what I'm talking about is something taken by Manuel out there in Idaho, and it shows, the moon swirl long line, and then all of a sudden it disappears, or then it comes back, but there's a gap between that long line and the sun. And it's like, well, what? Is this a hologram? What? But no, what it is, it turns and reflects the light. At first, it does reflect the light, and then it just goes down through the tube and does not reflect the light on the outside back toward Earth. And light is very bendy and very reflective. Look at rainbows. Look at prisms. You stand in water and it looks like your leg got chopped off at the shins. This is all light being toyed with. So it gets toyed with out in space, too. When does one of the moons of Nibiru join a moon swirl, and when and why might they remain independent? This depends on size. There are many factors in the dance of the moons, and per the Zetas, if a moon is too large, the repulsion force between moons will eject a large moon from the swirl. A large moon will escape the swirl during a gravity repulsion force push, which large objects don't want to, that's why our moon doesn't drop to Earth. It's not up there because it's going round and round so fast that centrifugal force keeps it up there. I did a mathematical exercise once on Astro, and with the astronomers up there, and got a couple of mathematicians to take this. Okay, the formula for gravity, the formula for centrifugal force. How big does the moon weigh? Blah blah blah. And when we got to the point where we would have the moon putzing along 6 inches above the surface of the Earth, you could practically walk and keep it company. So slow it would be going. And yet somehow it doesn't drop those last couple of inches to hit Earth. And then when that was approved by putting these two Newton formulas together, they all would turned red in the face and marched off because they were proved. This was hokey. There is a repulsion force, as the Zetas have said. Okay, details in the moon swirls are likely to become evident. Individual moons are being seen within the swirls, naked eye and without requiring filters. And this is people are getting these, and then they send me the email and they say, "What is this? Did I get?" Well, of course, everyone's going to be seeing this stuff. I can't handle an email from 7 billion people, so please don't send me your. Trust your eyes and go and read what's on Zeta Talk. Per the Zetas, the moon swirls will never stray further than 5 million miles from Nibiru, so the Earth is not in danger of an impact. All right, the Nibiru will never be closer than 14 million miles from us, and their big moons will not be further than 5 million miles from Nibiru. So it'll be out there, and NASA will be screaming, "This is it, it's the end of the world, it's the sun and asteroids," but it's not Nibiru. When will they admit that Nibiru exists? Yes, in 2012, a cluster of moon swirls looked like a worm with bug eyes. And in 2021, these double clusters are still looking like a bug. They do, remarkably. The sun rotates in a counterclockwise direction, and all the planets in the inner solar system rotate and orbit in a counterclockwise direction, following the direction set by the sun. Nibiru rotates in a retrograde orbit, and in other words, clockwise, and when it rounds the sun for a passage, also assumes a retrograde orbit direction. This is one reason for the extreme clash with Earth. It's a head-on collision. That's what we're talking about here. They are clashing on many fronts, just as the Earth's moon orbits the Earth in a counterclockwise manner. Nibiru's close-hugging moons and the debris swirling around Nibiru are orbiting Nibiru in a retrograde manner. He's totally retro. That sounds like something from a bebop dance club. We're totally retro. The direction of rotation of objects that orbit a central body, such as the sun, is controlled by what are called sweeping arms, particle emissions from the central body that reach out into space and are sweeping in the direction of rotation. This is what is shown in the photo of debris swirling around Nibiru. The double helix of the two dominant moons will likewise swirl in a retrograde manner. In that Nibiru is moving in a retrograde or clockwise direction as it swings around the sun, in the view from the northern hemisphere, Nibiru would lead, dragging its double helix and the two dominant moons behind it. The view from the southern hemisphere, however, finds this double helix in the front of the view, hiding Nibiru. All is reversed. Now, those people down in Argentina, etc., and Paraguay, they have little glue shoes, so they stick to the earth when they walk. So go schmuck and lift and clunk, because they're hanging upside down out there in space. We in the northern hemisphere stand upright. So, of course, they have a different view of Nibiru. Where we see it in the northern hemisphere is more like around the 4 o'clock position, or swinging up to 2 and back to 7 o'clock position because of the Earth's wobble that happens. Down there in the far south, Brazil, Paraguay, or whatever, they see it up there at the 11 o'clock position, or maybe, plus or minus an hour. So, because everything's reversed and they're hanging upside down. So we have a photo here comparing what we see from the northern hemisphere and what this guy in Argentina took a snap of. And sure enough, looking at Nibiru from the southern hemisphere, oh, there's the two dominant moons. You know, like Nibiru has a big butt or something like that. And then the one up in the northern hemisphere is, oh, there's Nibiru, and there's a double helix swirling behind it. Quite fascinating. In other words, all these photographers are confirming and proving that these are real, right? There have been close-up photos of Nibiru before by Alberto and Julie. In 2019, Alberto captured the face of Nibiru in an 8x zoom shot, showing that beige-colored clouds wrap Nibiru closely. This matches what I, Nancy, already know, as I was taken by spaceship to tour Nibiru and was shocked to see the close cloud cover was beige, not red. I was so sure it was going to be red dust. And it was totally cloud-locked, but it was beige. And in 2020, Julie caught a monster persona image of Nibiru, which matched the features shown by Alberto. Now, under the cloud cover that Alberto got, you could see kind of shadow areas and non-shadow areas. In other words, the land masses were showing through the cloud structure by having less clouds or more clouds or whatever they are. Where the land masses under the cloud cover cannot be discerned, cloud cover over land or water has a different appearance. Thus, the cloud cover has features. Nibiru has more water than land per the Zetas. So we see Julie's snapshot and Alberto's, and what Julie captured was the same features on the cloud cover that Alberto captured. More confirmation. But what will the public see without zoom lenses or filters? Nibiru would appear as an indistinct pink orb, and that's what we're getting in unfiltered photos. And it's rivaling the size of the moon. You know, it's next to the sun, not quite as large as the moon, but people say, well, that's pink? What's that pink orb? What? Other signs in the sky may include sunlight blocked by the Petrol monsters so that temporary day turns to dusk or Skyfire. As this actually happened. We had two big Petrol monsters that were like moving across each other in front of the sun. And it was like, oh, it's a beautiful sunny day. What? Did we have an eclipse? People thought it was an eclipse or something. Are the Petrol masses likely to create fires in the skies beyond the occasional glow seen to date? In the Philippines, fire appeared above the clouds in a crown that eventually disappeared into smoke. It's so dramatic. And it looks like, every petrol just rose up in a tube of fire side by side, and then at one end it was smoking off. And they took videos. Many people did. They were astonished. But of course they're all lying. According to the mainstream media, this is all just a conspiracy theory, The Taal volcano was having another eruption that day with sulfur dioxide emissions recorded at elevated levels ablaze in the sky. This blaze wafted upward as hot air does rise. In other words, it was a petrol set on fire by the volcano. You'll get a lot more petrol fire and blankets of fire dropping around close by a volcano, and that's a fact. In legend, it was the West Coast Indians and the Mediterranean legends, the Colbrin, the Bible, all this stuff, they recorded blankets of fire dropping from the sky. Well, and they have all those volcanoes. But even without volcanoes, fire can descend, as happened in Washington, D.C., just after midnight on April 15th. Visible even in the dead of night, this petrol monster burn and resulting cloud formation from the water vapor produced an undeniable view. They got it. Many people got that on video. It was like suddenly there was like a little cloud would form and then dwift away. Another little cloud. And you could see this big red mass where these little bitty clouds were forming from, because water vapor, right? It was likely only caught on film because it was descending over the White House. But these types of petrol burns are happening elsewhere apace. Brazil recently experienced little streaming clouds that instantly disappeared. Petrol bubbles will burn completely in the atmosphere if there is sufficient oxygen. One of the byproducts of such a burn is water, which will form a temporary cloud. Blown in the wind, these temporary clouds will disperse, giving the appearance shown in these Brazil photos. This was amazing because it looked like somebody was shooting little cloud puffs by the hundreds in one direction, chew, across the sky, just masses of them like birds on the wing. And it wasn't enough of a little cloud to create fog or anything big or merge into a bigger cloud, nothing like that. Nothing, no weather phenomenon could explain that, but people were clicking away, and I thought that was a dramatic show of what happens with petrol bubbles en masse when they light and disperse. And elsewhere, in Alaska, on April 11th, the sky turned green. The essential yellow color of the petrol in the sky affects the color of the sky. The sky is blue, the petrol yellow, and the result of these merging is green. And this was, of course, taken on video, too. It's like, what? We have blue, then we have green, then we go back to blue. What is this? Does the moon ever occult elements of the Nibiru complex? And if so, is this considered an eclipse of sorts? This situation arose on April 11th when a photo captured a crescent moon casting a shadow toward a moon swirl cluster. The tiny sliver of crescent moon visible can only be seen as a shadow on the shade side of the moon. In other words, you don't really see the crescent moon. It is at that point where it disappears, right? But it's enough to occult what goes on behind it. So it really looked odd. And someone said, why is this so odd looking? And that was the explanation. The moon has, at this phase, virtually disappeared from view. The orbs visible near the moon are moon swirl clusters clinging together, magnetically attracted to each other. They are at a distance from Earth and the moon, in that the moons of Nibiru will never be more than 5 million miles from Nibiru. The moon is only occulting some of the activity behind it. This is another issue that people should bear in mind. When you look up and see this stuff, it is 2D, not 3D. You can't determine depth. So don't get frantic if you see something. Remember, those Nibiru moons will never get further from Nibiru, and Nibiru will never get closer to Earth than 14 million miles. So you're safe. The sundog is as familiar as the rainbows that are caused by refracting or bent light. Sundogs result when light bounces off ice crystals that are found at an optimal angle along a halo that forms around the sun. They're classic. You know, you look at the sun and you can see the halo and you can see top and on either side a little bright light, and then there's a rainbow on the outside of that bright light, and it's totally classic. Those are sunlight reflected off of ice crystals. They are not objects coming at you. Now that petrol masses are in the mix, also reflecting light off their round surfaces, how has this changed the appearance of sundogs? Because the entire swath of space between the sun and Earth is filled with petrol at the current time, sundogs will be distorted. And they have been. There's some weird-looking things, and the Zeta said, well, that's the sundog, distorted by more than ice crystals, by bouncing light off of the petrols, and oh, what a nightmare. Whales had an instance of flames in the sky in broad daylight on April 16th. This was captured on film, which shows flames licking up on all sides of the rising petrol tower. It's quite dramatic, and you cannot deny that those are flames. Those are flames like you had a torch stuck up there. And that's what it looks like. A petrol burn had been started close to the ground, with the flaming petrol then rising as heat rises. On April 20th, in Russia, in the Arctic, petrol-laden clouds can be seen dispersing their petrol. How long before they are lit on fire and descend in a blanket of fire? Very weird-looking, puffy clouds, very dark, as though they're really heavy with water or something. And like a little round, like something out of a child's, TV show. Hi, here's Cloud Man. Hi, let's go along. That just round. There was no fog, no cumulonimbus, not weather clouds at all, right? These cloud bubbles are dark, filled with more than water vapor, and not at all like the dark skies that precede a thunderstorm. And so it's always like, what the heck is this? That's what we've got going on for the last 2 months. Everybody's saying, what the heck is this? And it's only going to get worse. Signs that a skyfire has occurred can be seen in smoke residue, such as this egg-shaped cloud captured on April 21st. This ring of smoke is like an eggshell, huge, not at all like the wispy clouds normally seen. My father used to smoke a pipe, and he would tap his cheek and release, with his tongue, go ta-ta-ta, and there would be this big circle, like 2 feet across, that was a smoke circle. That's what these things look like, and people are taking photos of them. The next day, on Earth Day, the sunrise behind Lower Manhattan and One World Trade Center in New York City revealed more evidence of fire in the sky. The sunlight seemed to light all sides of the clouds, top, bottom, and both sides. This was a flash petrol burn for the Zetas, just as fog and frost burns off in the morning sunlight. And I compared that to older, photos of this same area where the sun is coming up around that time of year, da-da-da-da. You have sunlight on one side of the cloud. You don't have it on the back side and the top and the bottom and all that. But in this particular day, it was on all sides. Oh, here's it on the sun, on the front. Oh, on the back, too. How'd that happen? Etc. Well, in other words, a flash burn of petrol is something we better get used to. And yet more evidence when a photographer captured petrol almost in his face on April 22nd on a Florida beach. And you got to see this to believe it. It was actually not afar. It was right, probably a few inches in front of his camera. And it floated past, burning up in the sunlight as it went. And I don't know, other than the creature from the South Florida beach, that has developed wings or something, what that could be. What will be the outcome of this increasing petrol descending in the atmosphere? Apparently, denial and confusion. Here we go with Mr. MBB333 on April 23rd. Poor Mr. MBB. He does such a good job. He documents so well. He just can't say Nibiru. He can't say the word. It's like, oh gosh, what the heck? And this and he discovered on April 23rd smoking petrol balls dropping from the sky, and still cannot say Nibiru. He normally is quick with an explanation for the phenomenon he features, and he was at a loss as to what caused these dropping balls aflame, leaving twirling smoke residue behind them. And Andre, this is my snapshot in time for where we were up to a couple of weeks ago when I prepped this little lecture. And it keeps going, and it keeps going, and it's, Lord knows, I say, and I'm serious, I worry, that it'll be something like a blanket of fire dropped on Cleveland, and everything is fried, and nobody can, and they think that, and they say, it must have been the Russians or the North Koreans, or, it's just.
Well, at this point, we've noticed that a lot of it is in the upper atmosphere. Is that because of the density of the oil or the petrol that's coming from the tail is lighter now, much like gasoline would rise off of an oil patch, and then later we're going to get the heavier stuff that falls to the earth? Is that kind of how it works? Because that's how I think about it. Because most of the stuff is like blowing up in the not the stratosphere, but underneath, but where there's oxygen still, but being lit by volcanoes. And according to the Zetas, from what I've read is that it's actually going to fall and then start on fire.
Yes.
Like start trees on fire and such, you know.
Yeah, I don't know if it's coming through the atmosphere, so obviously it can drop, and people have seen that. One of the early things that we had a couple of months ago was it looks like 3 bags of water from balloon water, dropping in the atmosphere side by side over Denver, and down it was coming. You can't see an object inside the end of that blob, but it was streaming up and coming down like one long line, and it was falling toward the earth, and then people show that dispersing as it approaches. So apparently the petrol is heavy enough that it drops through the atmosphere.
Okay.
So never mind light or big or small or whatever, as it keeps increasing and gets more and more, we're going to have, flames up there, and it may look like light. What is that light up there? Somebody showed me something taken from an airplane where it was above the clouds. This has happened where, it burns above the clouds. I think we're just going to get an awful lot more of it. Peachland, Georgia, had a house set on fire, or almost. Somebody was out at 8 o'clock at night, and they saw this bright blob going, coming down. Then it seemed to be dispersing, but there was a piece of it that broke off that wasn't dispersing, and and came down in the neighbor's backyard, and there we had this huge bonfire. It was a 5-alarm fire. They were trying to save the neighbor's house. And it hit the news only because it was a 5-alarm fire. So we can expect that to happen anywhere. And I don't know what's coming next, but I know it's coming. A lot more of it. We're not going backwards. We're going forward to 2026 now is the projected date to when we'll have the last weeks in the pole shift. And between that then and now, there's going to be a lot more plate movements, earthquakes will increase, volcanic activity will increase, and lots of surprises. And don't ask me what they are, because if it's a surprise, I don't know. If it's supposed to be a surprise, I don't know.
Yeah. I think if you do enough research and look at the sky and look at what's going on with the earth changes, that maybe just ask your gut. You don't need to, just look around and ask yourself, are you safe? And then maybe your higher self will tell you maybe you need to go to higher ground or you need to do something better. But a good way to research this is go to the YouTube channel. I think that for Nancy Leader, if you want to just scroll down through the Zeta Report episodes, we do, I don't know, probably 4 a year where we concentrate on the visibility or evidence of Nibiru passage. And I know that Planet 9 is starting to come up in the news again, so we were on that, 3-4 years ago?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's
25 years ago for Zeta, and you and I have been around for 5 years at least, Exactly.
No, remember the prongs? I'm referring to like the prongs, that Planet 9 is not Planet X, but I'm like, come on, man.
They changed the name. Right, they changed the name. Yeah, 25 years Zeta Talk has been at it. And they used to call it Planet X, and then they changed it to Nibiru, hoping that nobody would read my stuff, so I quickly started merging in Nibiru, because I could see where they were going, Planet 9, and on and on. And periodically astronomers would be saying, well, maybe Obama will make an announcement in 2015, but according to the Zetas, he lacked courage and backed away from saying, by the way, Nibiru is real, and couldn't do it. So
meanwhile, the military had a Jade Helm set up, and they're like, what's going on?
They were ready for it. They were ready for the riots, in 2015. And it would have been great because we could have all kinds of people, growing gardens and chickens and inland and, that type of thing, but no. And Russia would have backfilled and said, yes, it's true. They are probably the most honest about, like the Patriarch Kirill saying, you'd have to be blind not to know that we're in the end times that the book of Revelations was talking about, we are in the end times. So they've been more honest, but But the problem is anybody who says, the closer you get when you're running with a lie, the further you run it, and the bigger and fatter it gets, the less likely you are to break and say it's all a lie. It's been a lie, And so they're likely to try to dig themselves in deeper, and keep it up. And what can be expected as we get to the point where people are dealing with tidal waves and Nibiru is riding up there in the sky, and you go and say to the people that are supposed to be in charge that took your money, right? They left. All of it is the garage door is open and the phone is not being answered, and they packed up the van and they ran. They have bunkers, they have big yachts. And so you cannot count on the goodness of politicians. Oh, no. You've got to do it yourself. And if you don't believe that we have a daily Earth wobble, find out where the sun is supposed to be rising. Ask Grandma. Ask Grandma where it rose. Yeah, and she'll say right there between the garage and and then it turns out that it's like way over her left shoulder that it's rising now. So it's that bad. You can tell by the azimuth. That's your documentation. Why should it be rising in the wrong place and setting in the wrong place? You can get filters for your camera and take a look, or just you don't even have to have a filter. What people are seeing now is they're taking these little snaps with their cell phones, and they're showing like several bright orbs in a row or something like that, and say, that doesn't right. That's not right. So do your own research, but don't trust the media. Don't trust politicians. When the pole shift happens, you should be 100 miles inland and 50 feet up, I think, or something like that. And the bottom line is then to not get affected by the initial sloshing oceans. But then after that, within 2 years, the sea level will rise because the open ocean bottom has got very, very cold water. But when you have a crustal shift of 90 degrees, right, you have a lot of friction, and that heats up the mud that's down there in the deep ocean and will warm the water, takes more space. Therefore, we're going to have a sea level rise of 675 feet, approximately. And that means that anybody living along the coastlines will not be, you'll have to get a houseboat. And yes, I know you've been paying mortgages on that lovely beach property, but it's too bad. That's after the pole shift.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But
so it's just
this is after the initial rocking of the shift. That's 2 years of rising, the creeping, frog in the boiling water thing, where it's like, it's nice to be on the coast right now because of the view, but just that's not the place to live. To be safe.
Yeah, and the bankers with their mortgage. Oh, you must pay. I can't. My Mercedes, and things like that. My 13 girlfriends. I have my expenses. So. It's just a mess, well, I expect martial law everywhere, yes.
Well, I mean, we're seeing kind of the fallacy of what's going on in the real world being played out on media, so I don't watch anymore, but from, if you want some more real information, you can check out, we have a Telegram group for Zeta Talk followers that's got some, relatively uncensored at this point. I mean, people aren't trusting Facebook to hold their accounts. We do have a Facebook group if you'd like to join that. It's also called Zeta Talk Followers. But check out the Telegram, t.me. I'm not sure the actual link, but if you have the Telegram app, just look up Zeta Talk Followers, and then you might have to answer a couple of questions to get in the group because we get spammed a lot. I just wanted to say that watch your social media because it might not be there. The information might not be there tomorrow. So if there's a way you can get the information today, you can join those groups. And then we have some plans that we're not talking about right now, but also you can look at the YouTube channel for Nancy Leader and scroll down through those. And And if you want to download them, it's fine. I mean, I don't think that's a problem, but at least get the information.
Please do.
At least get the, because we're relying on the internet, okay? So when the internet goes black or our channels go black, we were just hoping that there's other ways for you guys to get the information. So there's a couple of ways. Always you can go to zetatalk.com. The mirror sites are, we have a lot of, or Nancy has built a great server network there. And also poleshift.ning.com, Ning.com is kind of the sister site, more about earth changes over there and evidence. So.
Yeah, and what you just mentioned are sites that are not controlled by Zuckerberg of Facebook or Dorsey of Twitter, et cetera, and all these other sites where somebody...
or Amazon. Amazon servers, Please.
So that the truth is continually being attacked. So get your own copies, and nobody's going to come into your house and attack your PC. We hope, So and get educated and steer it. It just happened.
I don't know.
Oh no,
I like to blame.
Gone there.
I like to blame all my glitches. Everything that I do bad on the computer, I blame it on a hack. That's my new thing. I've been hacked. Actually, just press Control Alt Delete, and I've been hacked.
Yeah.
Well, good show, Nancy. I appreciate your time and always great information. This will be up on the YouTube channel,
later today.
/Nancy Leader.
Yeah, thanks, guys, and thank you, Andre, for being there for us at all times. Yes. Goodbye, world. Talk to you later.
Stay safe out there. You've been listening to the Zeta Report here on USA Emergency Broadcasting Network. Live first Mondays, also simulcast or rebroadcast on the Nancy Leader channel. You can check out our website for more preparedness information at usaebn.org. Also check out zetatalk.com and poleshift.ning.com.